The Artemis that arrives at the pad is born in parts in different facilities with specialized teams that manufacture, inspect and test components that must later join together as if they had been made in a single piece. One of the central locations of this process is the Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans, a massive industrial installation where the scale of the work changes the normal idea of manufacturing. There, they do not build a small vehicle, nor a conventional aircraft, nor a structure intended to stay on the ground. They build the SLS core stage, the main body of the rocket, a column over 60 meters high containing cryogenic tanks, avionics, pressurization systems, feed lines, and attachment points for the side boosters. The core stage is the great functional skeleton of the rocket. Its structure must be lightweight, because every additional kilogram reduces launch efficiency. But it must also be strong because it receives brutal loads during ascent. At liftoff, the vehicle does not just go up. It vibrates, compresses, flexes, transmits thrust, supports the weight of the Orion spacecraft, and passes through a dense atmosphere that generates enormous aerodynamic forces. Therefore, the metal used cannot be treated as a simple industrial sheet. These are aerospace aluminum alloys worked with high-precision processes, special welds, and constant controls. One of the most significant challenges is in the tanks. The SLS uses liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Liquid hydrogen is kept at extremely low temperatures, around -423 degrees Fahrenheit, a cryogenic condition that turns the fuel into a material difficult to store and handle. The tank must not only contain it, it must prevent it from gaining heat too quickly, limit evaporation, preserve its structural integrity, and maintain secure connections with the lines that will feed the RS-25 engines. In a common factory, a leak would already be a problem. In a moon rocket, a hydrogen leak can stop an entire mission. The construction of these tanks requires long, clean, and repeatable welds. For this, gigantic assembly tools and friction stir welding are used, a process where metal pieces do not melt as in traditional welding, but soften and mix through pressure, rotation, and mechanical heat. This technique allows for the creation of very strong joints with fewer internal defects and a quality suitable for structures that will be subjected to extreme pressure, vibration, and thermal changes. Precision is not a luxury, it is a basic condition for the tank not to fail. Next come the rings, sections, domes, panels, and internal structures. Each part has a specific function. Some support loads, others separate tanks, others house electronic systems, others connect the core stage with the upper part of the rocket. When viewing a section of the SLS inside Michoud, it may seem like a simple piece because of its size and cylindrical shape. But every surface contains geometries, reinforcements, channels, joints, sensors, and mounting points that were calculated to work for minutes under extreme conditions. Weight reduction is another battlefield. In aerospace parts, removing material can be as important as adding it. That is why multi-axis machining machines capable of cutting reinforcement patterns into aluminum panels are employed. The goal is to eliminate mass where it is not needed and conserve it where the loads will be greatest. The result seems contradictory, a lighter piece, but still capable of resisting. This logic is present in almost the entire vehicle. The rocket must be strong enough to survive launch, but light enough not to waste energy lifting its own weight. Once the main sections are manufactured, a less visible but equally critical stage begins: inspection. In a moon rocket, it is not enough for a piece to look correct. It must be proven that it is. Dimensional controls are applied to verify that each section has the exact shape. Welds are reviewed. Cracks, inclusions, deformations, or internal defects are sought. Non-destructive methods are used to detect flaws not visible to the naked eye. Every deviation is recorded, evaluated, and corrected if necessary. There is no room for trusting appearances. Thermal protection is also part of manufacturing. The insulating foam covering the core stage is not there for aesthetics. This layer protects the cryogenic tanks from external heat and helps reduce ice formation. When a tank contains ultra-cold fuel, the air around it can condense and freeze on the surface. Furthermore, any heat input increases propellant evaporation. Insulation is, in simple terms, a defense against the Earth's environment before the rocket even takes off. The heart of the SLS is in its 4 RS-25 engines. These engines are not new in their basic concept. They come from the space shuttle experience, where they demonstrated for decades an extraordinary combination of power, efficiency, and reusability. But in Artemis, they fulfill a different function. In the shuttle, the engines returned with the orbiter. In the SLS, the RS-25s work during ascent and are lost with the core stage. This changes the logic of the system but does not reduce the requirement. On the contrary, each engine must deliver thrust with extreme reliability because a failure during launch can compromise the entire mission. Each RS-25 burns liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. The choice of these propellants responds to their high performance. When combined, they produce water vapor at extremely high temperature and velocity, generating a very efficient impulse. But that efficiency comes at a price. Liquid hydrogen is difficult to handle. It has low density, requires massive tanks, and leaks easily through microscopic spaces. Liquid oxygen also requires cryogenic temperatures and compatible materials. The entire propulsion system must work like an extreme plumbing network. Valves, pumps, sensors, conduits, actuators, and combustion chambers working at the limit. Before ignition, the engines and lines must be thermally conditioned. One cannot suddenly send cryogenic propellant to components that are at room temperature without generating dangerous stresses. That is why there are cooling sequences, purges, pressurization, and verification. The launch does not start when the flame appears. It starts much earlier, with a technical choreography where systems prepare to withstand a violent change in temperature, pressure, and flow. The four engines must act as a unit. Each has its own control, but all respond to a common logic. During ascent, they can pivot slightly using gimbal systems to direct thrust and control trajectory. This means they do not only push downward, they also help guide the rocket. The orientation of the engines, their alignment, and their dynamic response are essential to keeping such a tall and heavy structure stable. A rocket does not go up like a perfect bullet. It is correcting itself all the time. Added to the engines are the two-side solid rocket boosters. Each booster generates an immense force during the first minutes of flight. Unlike liquid engines, which can be regulated and shut down with more control, a solid propellant works much more directly. Once ignited, it must burn its load until the planned cycle is complete. Therefore, its manufacture requires special precision in the solid fuel grain, in the casing, in the joints, in the nozzle, and in the separation systems. A booster is not a simple tube filled with energetic material. It is a structure designed to burn in a controlled, predictable, and symmetrical manner. The segments of these boosters are manufactured, inspected, and tested separately before being integrated into the vehicle. Horizontal ground tests allow for the analysis of thrust, combustion stability, internal erosion, nozzle response, and casing integrity. When one of these solid engines ignites in a test, the goal is not a spectacle. The goal is to measure. Sensors record pressures, temperatures, vibrations, and structural behavior. Every data point serves to confirm models or correct them. The core stage must also be tested as a complete system. One of the most important tests is the green run performed at the Stennis Space Center. In this test, the core stage is installed in a test stand and its four engines are ignited as if it were on an actual mission but bolted to the ground. The goal is to verify that the tanks, engines, lines, computers, valves, and control systems work together for a duration equivalent to the ascent. The approximately 500 seconds of operation is not a casual figure. It represents the working time of the core stage before it separates in flight. A test like this is a way to rehearse the launch without launching. The rocket does not take off, but its engines do produce real conditions. The test stand receives vibrations, heat, sound, pressure, and gases at extreme velocities. Ground systems must feed propellants, control safety, shut down the engine if something goes wrong, and record enormous amounts of information. The noise is brutal, but what matters is in the data. A pressure reading out of range, an unexpected vibration, a different thermal response, or a valve acting late can force a design review. At this point, a fundamental idea appears. A rocket is not manufactured with metal alone. It is also manufactured with tests. Each trial adds information. Each ignition confirms or corrects an assumption. Each subsequent inspection reveals how the material behaved. Aerospace manufacturing does not end when the piece leaves the machine. It ends when that piece has proven it can fulfill its function within the complete system. Avionics fulfill another silent role. In the core stage are the brains that help control the flight of the rocket. Computers, sensors, measurement units, wiring, software, and internal communication systems coordinate the vehicle's response. During launch, decisions happen in fractions of a second. The rocket measures its state, interprets data, and adjusts engines to follow the trajectory. The raw power of the engines would be useless without that control. There is also enormous attention to compatibility between systems. An engine may work well on an individual test stand. A tank may pass its pressure test. A computer may respond correctly in simulation. But the real challenge appears when everything works together. The hydrogen flow must arrive when it should. The valves must open in the correct order. The sensors must deliver reliable readings. The structures must absorb vibrations without transmitting damage. The software must interpret the real state of the vehicle and not an idealized version. When the main parts are manufactured and tested, another problem begins: moving them. In any heavy industry, logistics are important. In Artemis, logistics are part of engineering. The core stage, the booster segments, the Orion spacecraft, the adapters, and other components cannot be transported as common cargo. They are too big, too delicate, and too valuable. Every movement requires planned routes, special supports, vibration controls, permits, cranes, lifting equipment, and trained personnel. Some pieces travel by ship, others can do so in special cargo planes. Maritime transport allows for moving huge structures from industrial facilities to Florida, where the Kennedy Space Center is located. But it is not just about loading and unloading. A rocket section must be kept protected from shocks, humidity, deformations, and contamination. During the transfer, its condition is monitored and procedures are applied to avoid damage. A small impact in a critical zone can generate long reviews. In space technology, transport can also become a test of patience. When the components arrive at Kennedy, the process enters a visually impressive phase: assembly inside the Vehicle Assembly Building, the VAB. This building was created to handle giant rockets, and its scale responds to a concrete need. To prepare a lunar mission, sections are not placed on a table nor in a common hangar. They are lifted vertically, aligned with huge cranes, and integrated onto a mobile platform. The rocket begins to look like a rocket when its parts are stacked one on top of another. Vertical assembly requires extreme precision. First, the solid boosters are prepared on the mobile launch platform. Their segments are placed and secured until they form the two side columns that will accompany the core stage. Then the core stage is positioned between them. This maneuver involves lifting an immense structure and placing it with very tight tolerances. It is not enough for it to fit. It must remain aligned to transfer loads, connect systems, and withstand the launch. Next, the upper stages and adapters are added. In the early Artemis configurations, the SLS uses an interim cryogenic propulsion stage known as ICPS, responsible for providing the necessary impulse to send Orion toward the Moon. Atop it, the Orion spacecraft is integrated, protected by its launch abort system. That escape tower has a vital function. If an emergency occurs during launch, it can separate the capsule from the upper part of the rocket and pull the crew away. It is a piece that ideally should never be used, but it must work if the worst moment arrives. Integration is not only mechanical. Electrical systems, communication lines, software interfaces, and separation mechanisms are also connected. Every joint must be verified, every connector must be checked, every system must respond from the ground and within the launch sequence. The complete rocket becomes a network of structures, energy, data, and fluids. On the outside, it looks like a white and orange tower. On the inside, it is a technical architecture with thousands of control points. Before the move to the pad, integrated tests are performed. Teams review electrical continuity, communications, pressurization, navigation systems, flight software, safety mechanisms, and mobile platform response. Countdown procedures are also rehearsed. Many of the most important moments of a mission occur before liftoff. Propellant loading, for example, is a critical operation. Liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen must be introduced into the tanks under controlled conditions, maintaining specific temperatures, pressures, and rates. If a leak appears, an anomalous reading, or a temperature out of range, the count can stop. The transfer from the VAB to the pad is performed by the Crawler Transporter, one of the most impressive ground machines of the space program. This vehicle moves the complete rocket along with the mobile platform at a very low speed, because the priority is not speed, but stability. Transporting a structure of that height requires controlling slopes, vibrations, sway, and alignment. The rocket advances slowly toward the pad like a vertical factory in motion. At the launch pad, the system connects to the ground infrastructure. Access arms, fuel lines, electrical systems, communications, ventilation, fire protection, water for acoustic suppression, and support mechanisms integrate with the vehicle. At that moment, the rocket is already complete, but it still depends on a massive ground network. The pad is not just a base, it is a machine that feeds, controls, protects, and releases the SLS at the exact moment. The countdown summarizes years of work in a sequence of minutes. First, systems are verified. Then, propellants are loaded. Afterward, pressures and temperatures are stabilized. Control teams monitor thousands of data points. The software enters increasingly automatic phases. The RS-25 engines ignite before the solid boosters because they must prove they are working correctly before releasing the vehicle. When the boosters ignite, there is no turning back. The complete structure goes from being held by the platform to being held by its own thrust. In that instant, all manufacturing is put to the test. The welds from Michoud, the engines tested at Stennis, the booster segments, the insulating foam, the hydrogen lines, the sensors, the software, the Orion capsule, the adapters, and the mobile platform cease to be separate parts. They become a single machine, a machine that must defeat gravity, cross the atmosphere, and place Orion on the correct path toward the moon. The most impressive thing about Artemis is not just its size, it is the chain of precision that makes it possible.